Welcome to the DxR Clinician software demo. DxR Clinician, the premier tools for teaching, learning, and evaluating clinical reasoning skills. The clinical experience is one of the most critical aspects of medical education. The challenge is to present healthcare professional students with as wide a variety of patient cases as possible, to efficiently collect quantifiable data on student performance in each area of the clinical encounter, and to process those student records for maximum insight into the student's clinical competency. First are the DxR Clinician simulated patient cases, a catalog of over 120 professionally edited cases based on actual patient case records. Students practice the patient encounter in cases selected by their instructor. Students collect patient history and physical information, create hypothesis lists, justify their choices, interpret results, review consultants' reports, and develop diagnoses and management plans just as they would in a real clinical setting. DxR Clinician automatically collects each student selection and entry. These student activity records are automatically compared to the case's built-in evaluation criteria. Students get instant feedback on how they performed when they complete a patient encounter. Instructors evaluate each student activity record in the DxR record utility, judging the student's skill at making diagnoses, their clinical reasoning process, as well as their ability to develop a management plan and their knowledge of the content involved in the patient case. You can score all aspects of student performance, modifying the grading criteria as needed in the key areas of clinical problem solving. The DxR Clinician software suite also includes a management utility. Instructors may use this utility to assign patient cases and to customize both the patient cases and the student evaluation criteria in those cases. This way you can focus the learning and evaluation experience on selected aspects of the patient encounter. Also, instructors can author their own patient cases, complete with case data and evaluation standards tailored by the instructor for his or her students. We will demonstrate the key features of the DxR Clinician software suite. The central component of DxR Clinician is the simulated patient case. When students log on to your DxR Clinician site, they enter the DxR waiting room and pull the chart of their assigned patient. The DxR Clinician case simulates the actual patient encounter. The student's task is to document pertinent patient information by interviewing the patient, performing physical exams, ordering labs, and reviewing lab results. The information collected becomes the basis for hypotheses, diagnoses, and management plans. Students usually begin investigating the patient's problem by interviewing the patient, although they may choose to start by performing a simulated physical exam or by ordering lab tests. The investigative and documentation processes are similar in all these areas. In the interview, students gather information on the patient's history and review of systems. They do this by choosing the category of questions, selecting a specific question, and reviewing the patient's response. In this manner, students demonstrate their investigative abilities to document pertinent patient history information from a simulated patient encounter. Another aspect of the clinical encounter is clinical reasoning. Students must create and update a list of hypotheses as they work through the patient encounter. The record of how the student forms and rules hypotheses in or out allows you to trace the student's line and method of inquiry. In this case, the student chooses to inquire about the patient's respiratory status. The student selects the respiratory category of questions. Then the student asks a specific question, and the patient's answer appears. The student may be prompted to add new hypotheses, update and prioritize their hypothesis list periodically as they glean more information through their clinical investigation. Now you have seen how the student documents findings from a simulated patient interview and begins forming hypotheses. Next, we will move to the exam, where the same investigative and documentation functions apply. In the DxR exam room, students conduct simulated physical exams of the patient using the exam tools and the patient portrait views. The physical exam commences when the student selects one of the exam tools and applies the tool to the appropriate patient body part or area. Exam results can come in a variety of forms. Some exams produce results in the form of a sound, such as these breath sounds. Other exams, such as this eye exam, may produce graphic results. The student also may document what the exam reveals by interpreting the exam result. The student is also provided with a consultant's report. The student's ability to properly interpret results from any investigative item in the exam, interview, or lab will help you assess the student's content knowledge. Students also gather information in the DxR lab. In the DxR laboratory, students continue confirming or ruling out their hypotheses by ordering and reviewing the results of lab tests. The most routine labs are here. Hundreds of other lab tests are available as well. Lab test results can come in several forms: text, charts, video, or graphics. To learn whether students understand the lab results, you can require them to interpret lab results. That function also is available in the exam and the interview. The student's clinical investigation culminates in a diagnosis. Students select a diagnosis from their hypothesis list, modifying their selected hypothesis in pathophysiologic terms based on the patient information they document. The information the students enter and select on this screen can help you determine how well students use the information they have been able to document. Once the diagnosis is complete, the student may be required to create a management plan to address the patient's issues. DxR Clinician allows the creation of a management plan with multiple management activities, starting with the decision to treat the patient in the hospital or as an outpatient. Students choose the appropriate management categories, in this example, medications. Then they select and/or enter specific orders within that category. Once students have completed the patient encounter, DxR Clinician can provide them with feedback on their performance in these assessment categories. Stars mark the tasks the students completed successfully. Category buttons reveal the items required for satisfactory performance. If the student failed to include any of the items required, they can click the item to see the information, adding to their store of knowledge after they are done working through a patient case. At this point, the student exits the DxR Clinician case. The complete record generated when the student uses the DxR Clinician software is recorded in the Student Activity Record. The instructor can review the student records using the Record utility. With the Record utility, you can access, review, and analyze student activity records. You can review statistics on how the group of students performed, and you can adjust both assessments of student performance and the evaluation criteria's performance values. You may start reviewing student records on the Student Record screen. The program creates a student activity record screen for each student, finding matches between the case's evaluation criteria and the items the student selected. Each evaluation is shown under one of three key areas of the clinical investigation process: diagnostic tasks, management tasks, and content knowledge. Here you can see at a glance how your student performed. SOAP notes also can be included as part of the overall score. An instructor who wants to know more about the student's workup might start by reviewing the student's diagnosis. Clicking the heading displays the student's final diagnosis as compared to the standard set by the instructor. In this case, COPD is the primary diagnosis. Emphysema is listed as an acceptable synonym. In this example, the student arrived at an acceptable diagnosis, but misspelled it. If, after your review, you are willing to accept the student's version of the correct answer, you can click to override the computer's assessment, giving the student credit. You may override the computer's initial judgment in many areas. The student record screen also includes the student and group performance chart, showing how the student performed in each major section of the case compared to the case standards and the group averages. The student record screen displays quantitative evaluations as well as the overall case score in the evaluation area. The record utility arrives at each of these scores by taking each student's record and applying the grading standards set in the scoring paradigm, located in the Adjust Criteria section of the record utility. The scoring paradigm is a yes-no decision tree leading to both a qualitative assessment and a quantitative assessment of student performance. For the clinical reasoning score, points can be earned at many nodes in the decision tree. You can change the paradigm point values to emphasize or de-emphasize a particular skill in working up a patient problem. Beginning with their hypothesis list and diagnosis, students move up or down the decision tree. In addition to the clinical reasoning score, the DxR record utility assigns a level of diagnostic performance for each student. The student's performance is evaluated at each successive node until he or she eventually arrives at a level of diagnostic performance ranking. In the example we showed earlier, the student dropped out of the decision tree at the competing hypothesis node, earning a diagnostic performance ranking of premature with diagnosis. Weights make this qualitative ranking part of the quantitative score for overall case performance. Clinical reasoning and diagnostic performance are two of the many evaluation measures you can set on this screen. You can change any or all weights and scores in any area to reflect the evaluation criteria you wish to use for your students' records. As you have seen, the record utility provides you with a great deal of control in ranking each student's performance. The record utility also gives you a broader view of group performance and the effectiveness of their educational experience. We'll access the Record Statistics screen. The Record Statistics screen allows you to see how many students in the group included each of the case standards in their workup. If you notice that few or no students included a particular item, you can develop teaching points around that item. Now that you know how a case is structured and scored, you may be interested to know how to use the management utility to customize the case for use with your students, or how you can create a completely new case using the online authoring system. The DxR management utility is the instructor's editing tool for controlling all aspects of case delivery and evaluation. You can control who has access to a DxR Clinician case. You can edit the original patient data, and you can alter any of the evaluation standards used to judge student performance in the case. You can set limits on the number of information requests a student can make before being penalized, specify results the students must interpret, and items they must justify, add links to web-based learning resources for just-in-time learning within the case, and link content knowledge questions to investigative items. Also, you can determine what points in a DxR case the student must provide a list of hypotheses, and you can determine which sections of the case the students will have access to. Finally, it is in the management utility that you can review student records and set up group records for evaluation in the record utility. You may want to create your own original DxR Clinician cases. This option is available with the DxR authoring tool. You give the patient a name, determine where the case will be stored. Your choice automatically adjusts the exam and lab results to reflect normal results for that type of patient, so you need enter only your patient's unique results. The authoring tool also allows instructors to easily include their own graphics and sounds, such as X-rays and heart and breath sounds. You can build every detail of the evaluation criteria to meet your specific goals. And after you're finished, you can immediately see the new case just as students will see it. We've demonstrated just some of the DxR Clinician features that allow you to customize a simulated patient case, deliver the case to students, and then evaluate the results. For more information on pricing, contact DxR Sales.